saw the special election results in Tennessee, 13, 14-point swing. A, how much of a warning sign do you think that is for Republicans headed into the midterm? And then B, are you worried that redistricting in Florida would dilute very strong Republican districts and make them more in play?
Well, the redistricting is irrelevant because they're not allowed to use the partisan data. They have to just draw and they will do that. And that's what our current map is. But just generally speaking, yeah, it was a big warning sign. You have every election that's happened has been a 10 to 15-point swing, towards the Democrats. That's just what's happened lately. And in fact, if you go back over the last, probably since 2016, you had 2020, Trump had good turnout. 24, Trump had good turnout. Florida 22, we did very well, obviously set the pace. There's some things, but overall, Republicans have underperformed, particularly when Trump wasn't on the ballot, because I think some of the voters will vote for him, and they'll vote for the Republicans if they're already going out, but if he's not on, a lot of them won't go and vote. And I think the warning sign is the turnout was actually about midterm level last night. So special elections can be screwy, right? Because it's only the hardcore committed people that go, and it's always the party out of power that's more motivated to vote. But this was a midterm level turnout, and you had a 13-point underperformance from a year ago when the president was running. Some of this is just natural, right? When you have the party in power, the other side's more energized. They come out, they want to vote, and then the party in power, its voters, are more complacent. And so that's just the natural. That's been true in pretty much every midterm, with the exception of one or two for the last 50 years. So I would anticipate, that dynamic is obviously not going away. Now, you also have a situation of, what are you, delivering in the Congress? What are you delivering here? Honestly, I think even here in Florida, yeah, we've won big, but we won big because we delivered big, right? It wasn't just because we won the beauty pageant and did all that. No, that wasn't it. It was because people saw leadership. They saw following through. Instead of doing idle promises, we're actually delivering and doing things that people appreciated. So, we have supermajority in the Senate, supermajority in the House. Based off the House's performance, in 25, would they keep the supermajority if the election were today? No, I don't think they would, because I think some of the voters who have appreciated what Florida's done, I think probably have been alienated by that performance. So, I think even here in Florida, they need to be swimming in the same direction that the voters expect us to do. It's totally fine if you campaign on something. You don't have to campaign on what I believe in, but you got to tell voters what you can do. Then you got to get in and follow through. And I think the problem that they had was, they told voters basically they were going to continue to do, our Florida agenda, and then they got in and they tried to unwind it, and that, a lot of our folks did not like that. And part of it was just, it was false advertising, right? You didn't tell them that. If you want to stop our anti-woke higher education reforms, campaign on that in a Republican primary. Tell them you think you want to make universities woke again. See if they'll vote for you for that. Tell them you wanted to make Florida a sanctuary state, the bill I vetoed at the special session. All the stuff we're doing. Highway patrol, thousands and thousands of arrests of illegals turned over to ICE. Our detention facilities we have, turning over, ICE brings deportation. We have way more. ICE has done way more deportations out of Florida than they would have had we not done what we did. But, they passed a bill to make it illegal for the governor, make it illegal for me to work with ICE to help increase deportations of illegals. That was in the bill, literally in the bill. Did any of them run on that in a Republican primary? Obviously they didn't, because they wouldn't have been able to live to tell about it. So, I think some of this stuff is just, if you do what you say you're going to do, even voters that don't necessarily agree with everything, they will appreciate that, hey, I know where these guys stand. They did it. I think it's when you run one way to get elected and then you do some other stuff. And Florida, there's just the issue, Tallahassee's far away. There's a lot that goes on in the bowels that people may not be able to see. And it's like, can you just get away with that? So I think certainly for Florida, you're going to have some of those more marginal districts. And the question is, are our voters going to feel passionate enough to come out at sufficient levels to be able to support those folks? I can tell you, in 22, people they walk over coals barefoot to come out and vote because they understood that we had to keep the momentum going. They understood what could have happened, the 4 years prior had that election gone the other way. So there was no way they weren't going to do it. 24, you're looking at Kamala Harris. They were all going to come out, and they did, and they came out in big numbers. 26, I think, is going to be a little bit more challenging for Republicans. Not insurmountable, but certainly an issue that let's put it this way. If I was advising someone who was running, I say you cannot bank on 2022 levels of Republican support. You can't bank on that. You can't even bank on the 2024 levels, of support. And that was a presidential year. It tends to be a little bit more competitive in some respects. Although I will say 24, they didn't even 2024, just think about it. We were the most significant swing state for a generation. 2020, I don't know if you guys remember, I couldn't even turn on cartoons for my kids without a Biden ad saying how bad Trump was. It was like they poured so much money into this state in 2020. Obviously, Trump won, I think, by 3.5%. So fast forward then 24, not 1 cent spent in Florida. Like it was just like it didn't exist. Like you've never seen it be the most expensive and then not even a competition in Florida. So I think that's obviously good, but I don't think people can bank on that level of turnout. You got to earn it. You got to go out and earn it. And ultimately, you dance with the one that brung you, right? Like when the voters backed you and they backed you on a certain thing, stick with that. Do what you told them you would do. Don't try to unwind. I talked about these insurance premium reductions, auto insurance reductions. That was all because we did the overhaul of the legal market and the litigation reform. The Florida House, they tried to reverse that in this most recent session. I can tell you there would be no rebates scheduled. There would be no announcements of rate reductions had that succeeded. Now, they didn't campaign on that, right? So tell voters what you're going to do, follow through. Don't tell them one thing and do the other. That may be something I think that some of our Florida voters are going to be a little bit more sensitive to, maybe than some of these other states. I don't know, but yeah, look, this is a natural thing. There's a yin and a yang in politics. I always get a kick out of when people say their side wins an election. Oh, we're going to win every election going forward. Yeah, all you have to do is open a history book. That never happens. Like it always goes back and forth, right? And so when you have a midterm, the party out of power typically does better. That's just the nature of it. It's the dynamics that I discussed, and so that clearly that was there. And the thing about it is, you remember they had to spend a lot of money in this deep red district here in Florida earlier this year. Massive amounts of money went into that. They had to spend a lot in Tennessee, as well. So that's just what we're dealing with, and I think Republicans should go into it clear-eyed.